Hi everybody, here's a quick introductory video just to bring you up to speed. I realised since doing the Bible codes about the Bible changes and doing the matrices, I haven't really done an introductory video, so this is my late apology for that. However, if you look at the bottom of every video I've done anyway, I've put 3 links in there. One is the live stream I did with Kat on EYA report that was a couple of hours long, and I would encourage everybody to go watch that. But there's also 2 other videos, both at Sid Roth's website from I think late 90s and 2000. One's with Yaakov Ramsel, and that's a very good one where he explains about the code and how Yeshua is found in there, and it's really good. I've got to encourage you to watch that. And also Roy Reinhold is on the Sid Roth as well, and he also does a really good explanation of how life matrices work, and I encourage everybody again, watch those videos, they will help. But this is my way of doing my introduction, and it should help explain a lot about the matrix that I've found, and should give you a brief history and a good insight into how the codes work. So you can see on the screen the words RIPS explain that each code is a case of adding every 4th letter to form a word. So that means nothing, it's just a statement. At the bottom I have so we're using ELS of 4. Okay, ELS, let me just explain to you what an ELS is. ELS is equidistant letter sequencing. That's what the acronym for that is. And basically, if you're using ELS of 4 over here, where you see RIPS explain that each code on the right hand side, the letters in red are on a skip of 4. So if I go 4 from the R, we get to the E, 4 again, we get to the A, count 4 letters again, you get to the D, and so on. Pull those letters down to the bottom, we get this here, read the code. And that is basically how a code works, an equidistant letter sequencing code. We did them when we were kids. I think most people understand that. The difference is this is English. This is just to show you how it works in the English. The Bible code obviously is only in the Hebrew Old Testament, so obviously the letters are in Hebrew, and that is how it works. It's exactly the same as that. The difference being that in the old days people could only count with the hand. People could only count to, say, I don't know, maybe 100, maybe 250 if you want to really push it, maybe a little bit more, I don't know. But you certainly couldn't count 1,050 on a skip of 1,050 and then go another 1,050, or 1,400 and then go another 1,400. You would not be able to physically do that. It was impossible. It was only when computers came around in the late 80s, that period, that this all came about, and they understood, whoa, there's something in here, what is this about, as they began doing tests and running codes with the Old Testament. And that was how they came and stumbled across the phenomenon which is the Bible code. And so the invention of computers has opened this, and that's the only thing that's unlocked this very enigma, this supernatural thing. It's wonderful, it's just awesome. And today this is why you saw the Bible codes that I've done, because there's software that can look and do large skips like 1,000, and actually it can do the entire book. So if the book's just short of 1.2 million letters in the Old Testament, the Tanakh, so it can actually skip that way, and it can go backwards as well. It can do forward checks on a normal skip, and then it can go minus as well, so you can go both ways. And obviously the text gets rearranged every time, so there's limitless, and the amount of information, it is literally limitless what can be encoded within. And the Lord knew that. That's why he gave it letter by letter to Moses on Mount Sinai, knowing the end from the beginning. He is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. He sits outside this realm, outside of very time itself, and therefore he was able to give to Moses the entire encoded history of what is ever going to be and will be, proving ultimately that he is indeed the Ancient of Days. So moving on from the Lord knowing everything outside of time and space, and as he's dictated it to Moses letter by letter, the first inkling that the Old Testament rabbis knew about the code in the Bible was they once counted 49 letters from Genesis and got to the 50th letter in the book of Genesis, and they found the letter T counted another. It's Tav in the Hebrew, but the letter T to us, and they counted another 49 letters, and on the 50th you hit the Vav. Then same again, you hit the Resh, you hit the H, you got Torah. So they really thought, well, that can't be with our accent. So they counted again. They went to Exodus, 49 letters in, on the 50th, Tav, and a Vav and a Resh and an A, and Torah spelled out again. So they thought, that's interesting. They checked the third book in the Torah, Leviticus. Didn't happen. They checked the fourth book, Numbers. It happened, only this time around, instead of hitting the letter Tav first, they hit the letter Hey, and it's spelt backwards, the word Torah, this time around. Same in Deuteronomy. And they thought, this is strange, we've got the 50th letter every time. So on a skip of 49, on the 50th letter, on you hitting the 50th letter, you are getting Genesis pointing to Exodus, Exodus pointing to Leviticus, Deuteronomy pointing to Numbers, and Numbers pointing to Leviticus. All centralising and pointing to the middle book of the 5 books, the book of Leviticus. Now, 49 is the square root of 7, and it was on the 50th letter. So if you looked on a skip of 7 in the book of Leviticus, if you counted 7 letters in, you'd hit the Yod, another 7 you'd hit the Hey, then the Vav, then the Hey, every 7th letter, pointing to Yahweh. So the books, the Torah, is basically pointing to Yahweh, which is the name of God. Jehovah to us as English, and Yod He Vav He is the sacred name to the Hebrews of God Almighty. And so everything, to start with the codes, was always pointing to Him and Him alone. And they realised then that there was something in the Bible, in the Old Testament, that was unique. And that was one of the first things, I believe, that people realised in Old Testament times, that there's something special to the Torah and the Tanakh. The Tanakh being the rest of the Old Testament. So, moving to the fast forwarding a few centuries along into the 80s, and we find students that were messing with the computers. They found the name of a famous rabbi called Rambam, and details about a famous book that he also wrote that was encoded within the Torah. So they took this info to the Hebrew University and their mathematicians. And one of the world's most famous mathematicians, EYA'S Rips, was very sceptical at first. But after checking for himself with others, they realised they were onto something. So, in the 80s, EYA'S Rips and Doran Whitson, they're researching very heavily on the Bible codes now. They realise this is way beyond chance. They've looked at this from a mathematical and analytical mindset. They take it to a peer-reviewed statistical science magazine and said, have a look at this. So this magazine in America, they said, well, maybe you got lucky. So they said, go and look for 34 rabbis of the past, not just this guy. So they did. They went back. They did this, what is now called the Great Rabbis Experiment. And they went searching. They looked for 34 famous Jewish rabbis. They looked for their birth and death, and they found 32 out of the 34. They were amazed. They showed the findings back at the peer review magazine, Statistical Science, and they said they published the findings in their magazine. So they worked months on it, presenting everything, wanting to do things right, make it look good, etc., so forth and so on. They take it to them, but at the last minute, Statistical Science go, whoa, too controversial for us, we're not going to publish this now. So after a bit more pestering and showing more evidence, cities where they lived, their birth and deaths too, along with all the famous rabbis' names, etc., the Statistical Science guys palmed them off to the most respected statistician in the world, the #1 by the name of Percy Diaconis, and they said if you can get him to sign off on it, we'll publish it for you. The funny thing about this, he was president and all of the American Skeptics Association at the time. LOL. He said, no way, I'm not having any of this. He said, go and do a controlled experiment in another book, War and Peace. Well, they did, and they found nothing, absolutely nothing. So then he said, okay, go and do Moby Dick. They found nothing again. So he said, okay, go do 5 more Hebrew books. And he told them to scramble up the Torah as well, and to report back, including the scrambling of sentences in these books as well, and report all your findings. So they did that, and they found nothing at all in any other text like what they found in this particular code with the Old Testament. So back and forth this goes, 12 experiments in total checked, and it comes obvious that they just do not want to publish these findings because of the repercussions involved. Eventually, the Jewish rabbis, they cry out and say, look, what have we got to do to get this scientific fact published in the peer review magazine? The statistician said, come back after you've checked 1 million more books, and then I'll sign off on it being real. And what is incredible to me, you've got to really appreciate the tenacity of these rabbis. They went another 4.5 years, looked and checked over 1 million more books that had absolutely nothing like what's in the Hebrew Old Testament. And they knocked on his door 4.5 years later, and he answered the door, went, what, you guys? And they gave him the results and said, there you go, 1 million books. Nothing. And he had to stick pen to paper right there and then. So in August 1994, the Statistical Science magazine came out, showing and placing out in the mainstream the fact that there is an enigma, something they could not explain, and that it had been peer reviewed, checked over, and no one could debunk it or explain this phenomenon. So that's how the Bible codes were introduced to the world. But just a quick little thing that I'd forgot to mention earlier was just before they did sign off, as they put pen to paper for the Statistical Science magazine, I mean, they couldn't believe that the guy who was the top statistician of the world signed it. They just asked at Statistical Science, just before we publish, can you do one more thing for us? Can you just go and have a look and give us the odds, what it might be that this just might have happened by accident? So they did. And in a normal experiment, the level of significance that you need to publish any experiments usually got a p-value, and the p-value can be like 95%. That's the normal general benchmark, 20 to 1. In a normal situation, you would expect them to say, well, if it's 20 to 1 or above, that's fine, we'll publish it. But oh no, well, they didn't want that. In a dangerous life and death situation when it comes to these statistics, it's normally 50 to 1. So we're talking serious things here, you know. Anything that's got connotations to do with life, death, or dangerous in an industry starts at 50 to 1 and required on the p-value. So these guys turned around and said, we'll publish, we need to see 1,000 to 1. Now that's just not seen or heard. It's unheard of inside. You just don't ask for that kind of odds. That's crazy. I mean, this is how much they did not want to publish this. So anyway, they did. They had a look, they worked it out, and the result was that it was 62,500 to 1 that this could be here by accident. So that's why they signed off on it, and they had to do what they did in respect of publishing it in August 1994 in the Statistical Science mag. So they went through a lot, the guys, and again, credit these rabbis for pushing through and doing this and making sure this came to the world scene so everybody could see and hear about the fact that God had indeed encoded and has encoded the Old Testament